We're going to turn our attention now to our next conversation. We're actually going to focus on Cardano and Bitcoin, and their sort of both internet-connected and inclusive systems. We've got several panelists coming to join us on stage. As you can see, we're getting the chairs ready for them. And the idea is that they're going to discuss, they're going to outline why their continued interplay and cross-pollination is crucial in order to sort of advance a more inclusive and a more sophisticated blockchain ecosystem. All of these things need to come together at some stage, and certainly our next panelists have a pretty clear idea of how they want to involve the interplay there. So we have Vladimir Shapovalov, who is head of research for Cointelegraph. He's going to be moderating this session. We've got several people who will be coming to the stage, including Fisher Yu from Babylon. We've got Marvin Bertin from Maestro, Raul Antonio Rosa Padilla, he's from Fluidtokens, Edan Yago, of course, CEO of Bitcoin OS, and Andrej Majcen, who is from Bitcoin Suisse AG. So, pretty impressive panel of guests. I'm sure it's going to be a really exciting conversation. And yeah, I can't wait to hear about this symbiotic relationship. So I think we're ready to go. Good news. Let's invite all our panelists onto the stage.
That looks good. We should switch as well.
All right.
Hello, everyone. A pleasure to meet all of you here. I guess we should start off with Edan's announcement that he has to make, and then proceed to the main panel discussion.
Thank you. Well, so we've been suffering from a bit of a dual purpose here in the whole world of crypto since the very, very beginning. In the very, very beginning, Bitcoin version 0.1.0, the very first version that came out, had two components to it. One was the creation of a token, which some of you may have heard of, called BTC. But the other part was the creation of the world's first DApp, the world's first decentralized application. It was called Poker Lobby, and it was supposed to be a distributed way to play poker across the Bitcoin network. And in the second version of Bitcoin, Poker Lobby was entirely removed. But ever since then, we've had this tension for 15 years. From the very genesis of the world of crypto to today, we've had this tension where we've had two parallel tracks. The first has been Bitcoin, with BTC, an unchanging system for stable currency that you can transact with and that you can hold, and that's it. That's the entire list of things that you can do with it. Very, very popular with that transactional and holding capacity, but that's it. And then, on the other hand, we have the entire world of crypto innovation, a flourishing of chains and dApps and systems and technologies, which remains ultimately a small fraction of the entire crypto space and a small fraction of Bitcoin. And so we have this tension where Bitcoin can be and is popular and can be used for holding value. And as a result, we've got $1.3, $1.4 trillion effectively dormant or trapped in Bitcoin. And we have projects like Cardano building out tools that would allow you to do much more, to trade in a decentralized fashion, to lend in a decentralized fashion, and to build effectively an entire decentralized web architecture. We have functionality. So permaware and functionality, and those two, up until now, have not met. Cardano is a very special chain. It is by far the largest, most significant chain built as a UTXO system, like Bitcoin, and with a long-term view of the world, like Bitcoin. But it too cannot interact with Bitcoin. And so the big announcement that we have today is that that is changing. That we have a major change coming for the entire world of Bitcoin, the world of Cardano, the world of crypto, and the world of finance as a whole. Because for the first time, those two parallel lines, which were never to touch, are bending towards each other. We are now able, through Bitcoin OS, to verify on Bitcoin mainnet zero-knowledge proofs. And this gives Bitcoin brains and eyes. For the first time, we can build smart contracts on Bitcoin, and we can give Bitcoin the ability to see what is happening on other chains. And possibly the most important chain to do this with is Cardano. What this means is that we will soon have the ability to trustlessly bridge assets from Bitcoin to Cardano and vice versa. We will also have the ability to utilize the smart contract capacity of Cardano to write smart contracts that execute on Bitcoin mainnet, turning Cardano into a smart contract platform for the largest asset base in the world. We're looking at an entirely new phase for Bitcoin, Cardano, crypto, and finance, and I'm super excited to be able to discuss it here on this panel first. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Edan. Thanks a lot for the nice start of the session. I guess my first question, starting off with that, would be, what's the significance of Cardano from the standpoint of not being, fully UTXO, but EUTXO specifically, that allows, to not create something like WBTC, but instead fully, allow BTC to exist on Cardano as it is on Bitcoin mainnet?
Sure. So I think probably a lot of people have heard about how Ethereum, for example, has been moving towards a modular environment, utilizing ZK proofs for scaling and creating other chains like rollups. But Ethereum actually never planned to do that. It was never part of the original plan. And the EVM system, and more generally the account-based system, is actually suboptimal for that purpose. Because the account-based system, when you are taking the state of the system and you are proving that state in the form of a ZK proof, doing that with an account-based system is extremely computationally intensive and difficult. But doing it with a UTXO-based system, where you don't have accounts that are constantly changing, but you have unspent outputs that are, either exist or they don't, they are binary, that is much more powerful. And so weirdly enough, Bitcoin turns out to be a much better system for building a modular crypto universe on, and for utilizing ZK proofs than pretty much any other chain except for Cardano. So Cardano, in my conversations with Charles, one of the reasons that he explained that he wanted to utilize UTXO architecture was to achieve exactly this kind of simplicity and finality. And so there's a very strong advantage there. Thanks
a lot. And basically, kind of exposing Cardano to BTC, what do you think would the impact be in the coming years from the standpoint of developing DeFi applications? Obviously, all of us saw at this conference that the ecosystem is growing quickly. But what would you think the next step for the DeFi ecosystem on Cardano would be to be able to compete with already well-developed DeFi ecosystem overall outside Bitcoin and Cardano?
Well, I'm a bit of a strange person to have on stage here because I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. And I've been looking at the development of Cardano over the last 8 years or so, kind of wondering what the hell are people doing? Like, why? Why do we even need this? And so kind of to end up here is an interesting irony. Right now, we have sort of two ecosystems that I think really need each other. On the one hand, you've got Cardano, which has a TVL of about $250 million. So we have a very powerful smart contracting system in search of an asset base. And on the other side, we've got an asset base of $1.3 trillion sitting dormant, a massive asset base in search of a secure, reliable platform for smart contracts. If 1% over the next year of Bitcoin's asset base were to transition over to Cardano, that would be a 40x increase in Cardano's TVL just from that. And I think probably we'll have opportunity to talk about some of the use cases, but you know, one of the other things which is interesting about Cardano is that it has, of the various chains out there, particularly put a focus on institutions and the developing world. Now, institutions are interested only in Bitcoin. And so they're going to need a platform to do this, and Cardano is a good candidate. But beyond that, if you think about 200, 300, 400 million people in Africa and the global south more broadly who want to hold BTC, there is literally no technical way for them to do that directly on Bitcoin mainnet. And so we need some kind of system able to provide greater scale, and there too, Cardano has been building those routes for many years.
I guess another question I would have generally for all the panelists would be, what position does Cardano put itself in when it tries to compete with lots of Bitcoin layer 2 positions, layer 2 solutions, and lots of side chains? And is it really ready to compete from the standpoint of its ecosystem? I guess, Marvin, we could start with you there.
Yeah, so we've seen the explosion of Bitcoin L2s, or at least projects that have ventured into Bitcoin L2s. But many of them actually are EVM based because it's a very mature ecosystem that people are familiar with. But it also begs the question of, like, is an EVM based VM maybe the best L2 architecture for Bitcoin? You know, history will tell, but the nice thing that Cardano has is it has a smart contract native way of introducing smart contracts into UTXOs, and it's the only chain that's really, or one of the few chains that's really pushed the UTXO architecture to its limits and really tried to bring full expressiveness to the UTXO architecture without venturing into the EVM side. And it's true that UTXOs has also like tricks up its sleeves, right? The fact that it doesn't use accounts, you can do like things like state channels. You can do ZK proofs. It's much easier because the transactions are deterministic, and so you can make roll-ups much more efficient and much more lightweight. And so bringing Bitcoin and Cardano together, I think they just have a lot of the fundamental data structures that are very similar. And like you were saying, right, I think they're very complementary, right? Bitcoin has this humongous liquidity, that liquidity, you know, it's very hard to replicate that. And Cardano has this incredible expressiveness of smart contracts that is UTXO native. I think it's just a natural fit that, you know, they should try to come together. And the goal for us, you know, as infra provider is to provide tools, you know, for people to build, lower the barrier to entry for people to experiment, and let people to innovate. So the real answer is we don't know what's going to happen, but I think it's worth creating this bridge and this kind of like platform that allows people to experiment and innovate and see what people come up with.
And then Fish and Raul, I guess, since you are, you know, well familiarized and work in the space of staking specifically, are there any specific trends perhaps that you are observing right now from that standpoint of view, if you look into that niche specifically?
Yes, absolutely. So lately we have been seeing something different happening on the Bitcoin ecosystem. As you said before, many layer 2s happened, many side chains of Bitcoin arrived, and people were finally able to do stuff with Bitcoin. And we are not talking about a few millions, we are talking about a market of billions, even more. And what was the issue? I've been testing myself some layer 2s, for instance, and what I saw is that once people were testing them, playing with them, there was no an active ecosystem. So people were going on layer 2s, going on the side chains, and there was missing something, a core. And this is probably something that Cardano is already there. So we are finally offering the security of a layer 1 for Bitcoin people, where they can finally bridge in a safe way with using ZK, their Bitcoin, and play around with them. as we know, we have been hearing about a lot of risk-taking, and I think that maybe we'll hear more about this later. And having the possibility to connect Bitcoin, that is the mother of chains, able finally to deploy and playing around with Cardano that released proof of staking as mechanism, unlocks a new way of possibility where not just for Bitcoin people or for Bitcoin users that can do much more than what they can do now, but also for Cardano users to offer and they already have a nice DApp ecosystem, and this is a liquidity injection for that. So I would say that it's a good match.
Sure. Fisher, do you have anything to add to that, or is there something else that you observe in the space right now?
Yeah, sure. I have a few comments on Bitcoin L2. Yeah, so the concept of L2 is invented for the Ethereum ecosystem to solve Ethereum problem. I don't think copy-pasting Ethereum stuff to Bitcoin will go very far. It's like putting a wrong gear in the machine. So Bitcoin needs its own scalability solution. And I don't think L2, the current way of L2 is the way. Cardano, on the other hand, being a UTXO-based one, from the pedigree perspective, is much closer to Bitcoin than those L2s. So I think Cardano, with the help of native use cases of Bitcoin, such as the Bitcoin staking that Babylon is trying to build, will have much more opportunity in becoming the answer to the Bitcoin scalability issue.
Thanks. Andrej, is there any specific feedback from your clients and counterparties that you're acting with on the development of then Bitcoin layer 2s in general, and any sentiment towards Cardano specifically? Basically, how ready is the market for both Bitcoin layer 2 solutions and for Cardano essentially integrating Bitcoin into its mainnet?
Yeah, thanks a lot, and I fully agree to what has been said before. I think it's very interesting to have this kind of interoperability between those two chains, and looking at the numbers, it makes a lot of sense, of course, while a lot of the Bitcoins somewhat lie idle around, and there is, of course, thanks to proof of stake, also somehow the need or let's say the motivation around to try to find a way on how to utilize actually funds that are lying around by, for example, doing staking. The challenge is, of course, always the bridging between the assets, or I mean, since Bitcoin is a proof of work chain by the very definition, you need to find clever ways, or what people often also forget is that Bitcoin can actually be upgraded, and it happened in the past with with SegWit back in the days that enabled then Lightning, or with Taproot, and there's also discussions around like OP-Cat, if I'm not mistaken, on actually integrating exactly these additional functionalities of potentially even having smart contracts on the Bitcoin network. But since it's every time quite almost religious discussion about those kind of changes, especially within the Bitcoin ecosystem, those things tend to take much longer as we usually anticipate. But it's of course interesting to see a lot of innovation happening in the Bitcoin ecosystem, and also the interoperability with other chains. And to answer your question, I mean, we see from the client demand side that there's not one size fits all kind of blockchain out there, and probably never will be. There is always some sort of coexistence, and I think also the mass adoption at the end of the day of all the different blockchains will be in specializing in some sort of a specific kind of use case, doing something better than the other ones do. We see demand, of course, on Bitcoin as, let's say, the mother of all of them, especially under the light of what else is happening in the global economy with interest rates and high debt and so forth. So it's the whole MicroStrategy and Saylor and Arthur Hayes kind of discussions that I fully support as well, and I think there will be the main demand, especially on Bitcoin. But as we already talked about before, Bitcoin is not the single solution for everything, and since there is a lack of programmability and smart contracts by the very definition of the chain, Bitcoin relies on other blockchains to exactly fill that gap until it potentially evolves one day or another into that direction, right? So, but I think it goes hand in hand.
So I think one of the reasons that I'm working on what I'm working on is to make sure that there is no need for us to introduce changes like OPCAT or whatever. I think the real power of Bitcoin is that it's permanent. It doesn't change.
I agree.
And that's what gives us its reliability. But even if we were to see something like OPCAT introduced into Bitcoin, if we were to see Bitcoin forked, we still would not see the majority of computation occur on Bitcoin. Bitcoin has 4 megabytes every 10 minutes. It's not going to be where you perform the computation that you would have in a smart contract. And so the way we've constructed our system, and the reason we're using ZK proofs, is you basically have a tiny smart contract on Bitcoin, which just receives the end result of the computation. And you do the computation somewhere else.
But you still need like a verifier, right? That is external, that verifies the information that by the native blockchain itself cannot be verified, which I mean is a way around. And I guess it works.
Okay, so that's great. So that the technology that we've introduced, BitSnark, the big deal is that we are actually verifying directly on Bitcoin mainnet. There is no external verifier. The verification is done by Bitcoin.
Excellent. Let's have a chat afterwards.
But then, would this technically mean that Cardano would be the primary blockchain for TradFi institutions and for high net worth individuals potentially, where we could see something like structured products, etc., 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 and various exotic trade-in and investment strategies, but fully on-chain and in a decentralized way, so that you wouldn't have to go through some sort of a centralized platform to be provided with that directly.
I mean, it offers a lot of possibilities in that direction, and it has all, let's say, the tools necessary for exactly that. So do some of the other chains as well. And the question is really, at the end of the day, what are the real-world use cases and applications at the end of the day, and what kind of chain manages to bring in some sort of relevant liquidity and transactions and use cases as well, because at the moment I think there's an overlap and there's different narratives in the space, and a lot of the different protocols try to capture them at the same time, and the question is, I mean, who captures what the first and brings in critical mass as well, really mass adoption, so to say.
But then, as we see that Bitcoin is still struggling to overcome its 70K price mark, for example, and the retail interest is at its lowest. It's not as high as it was in the previous beginnings of the bull runs. Would you say that potentially introducing specifically and kind of unlocking the capital which is stored in Bitcoin to essentially get us to the level at which we would like to be?
Interesting question. I don't necessarily think that retail adoption will be the main driver of, let's say, this bull cycle, and probably also not the next one. I think what we probably will see now is, besides the institutional adoption, is nation states or central banks to a certain extent, especially under the light of the current debt situation in certain countries, of interest rates, that there is not really trust in governments. If you just look at the yields of bonds, for example, 10 years is still inverse yield curves, and there's a lot of things completely wrong at the moment, I think, in the economy and I mean, yeah, I hope you have the same impression. But I think Bitcoin at least offers one of the remedies exactly to that. And I would make quite a high bet that we probably see quite some adoption in the next 5 years, that first kind of central banks, and not just from exotic countries, start to put Bitcoin on balance sheet, because at the end of the day, it's an unpolitical kind of asset. It's uncorrupt. It's the beauty of Bitcoin actually is its simplicity, right? It doesn't try to put too many hats on at the same time. It's a pure scarce good that we are having nowadays. It's a peer-to-peer payment channel. It's completely decentralized, and it's the largest computer network of this planet. So whenever a central bank tries to do some sort of diversification, and that's at the end of the day also their mission to a certain extent, especially if they heavily depend on other economies, then it's perfect for that. So let's see where it goes.
And then if we look at that from a slightly different angle, right? Bitcoin OS is here. Bitcoin on Cardano is becoming a reality. All things are looking great, right? But Marvin, I guess for you as a a platform which essentially kind of simplifies the development processes on Cardano, how would you say Cardano evolutioned over the past years, and how do you see the development of the ecosystem in general? Because obviously, at this particular point, attracting developers who are actually going to be building the products with Bitcoin on Cardano is of crucial importance.
Yeah, so what we do at Maestro is we are an infrastructure provider, but we specialize on UTXO chain. So we provide APIs and developer tooling for people building dApps on both Cardano and Bitcoin. So we work with a lot of developers, from day one, building the apps, whether it's a DEX, a wallet, a lending protocol, and we have this very generalized tooling, right, that really simplifies the process. And I think understanding the tooling is really important because it unlocks innovation. So I think what Bitcoin OS is really providing us is a new unlock for people to build and innovate. It's just a new piece in the puzzle, right? We work with projects like Fluid that have launched a product on Cardano, they've launched a product on Bitcoin, but that community is fragmented, right? So be able to have a trustless bi-directional bridge between Bitcoin and Cardano, that itself is a huge unlock, right? And being trustless is really important, right? Bridges are a point of attack, and you don't want to build a bridge that can lead to a lot like hacks. So having that piece, we were able to build a one-directional bridge from Bitcoin and Cardano before because we can verify, Bitcoin transactions on Cardano through the smart contracts, but we were missing this other piece, right? To be able to verify what happens on Cardano on Bitcoin, and that's really what Bitcoin OS is unlocking for us. And now we can finally build this bi-directional trustless bridge. So we're very excited to integrate with Bitcoin OS, make this available to all the developers that we work with, both on Bitcoin and Cardano, and then see what they come up with and what they build, right? So it's just this new abstraction that will allow people to either have liquidity flowing around or having wallets that are able to use Bitcoin and Cardano together, or use the expressiveness on Cardano and the liquidity of Bitcoin. I think there's a lot that can come out of it. And so, yeah, we're very excited about kind of this partnership.
And then from the perspective of attracting developers from other ecosystems, say from attracting those who are programming on Solidity, how do you think, how ready Cardano is for that inflow of developers, and how painless that transition could be for them? Because obviously that's a completely different environment, although, the JavaScript was introduced, etc., etc. You as a developer, all of you guys, how basically ready do you think the ecosystem is from that standpoint of view?
Personally, I think that probably this is the best moment for any developer to start to work on Cardano. Why? I've been working on Cardano before smart contracts were a thing, and finding documentation, finding the right programming language or even software to develop and test out things was really a challenge. Because on Solidity, you have years of experience, you can go Stack Overflow and you will find the answer to anything. But at that time on Cardano, the answers were on a Discord server, hidden somewhere, and it was very hard to find them. But now, with these years of experience, I think that it's 2 years and a half that we have smart contracts running on Cardano. The language is not anymore Haskell street related. So any developer can easily learn and onboard. There are many documentation, videos, books to learn about it. And why I say that it's probably the best moment, because leveraging this new skill that you unlock learning Cardano unlocks not just Cardano building, because now we are talking about building also on Bitcoin. And not just that, zero knowledge requires, is very UTXO friendly. And if you want to build stuff with zero knowledge, and we know that it's a trend, or now it's probably the future for compressing information and big transactions, you will need to deal with the UTXO chains. And so at a certain point, you will deal with Cardano, you like it or not. So this is the best thing.
Fisher, what's your thoughts on that?
Actually, I would like to comment on your earlier question about Bitcoin cannot break through 70 and yet no one is interested in Bitcoin. I think that's partly true because the Bitcoin has no native use cases, very hard to use. So I think Bitcoin OS, is a great breakthrough to convince people that, hey, Bitcoin actually can be used to do something. Yeah, so at Babylon, what we are doing is something similar from another direction. So we are building Bitcoin native use cases that doesn't require the users to trust any third party, and we turn Bitcoin into a stakeable asset to allow it to be used to secure any proof of stake system and earn yield. And yeah, we also have some numbers I would like to share with you to disprove that no one is interested in Bitcoin. So Babylon launched the phase 1 mainnet 2 weeks ago. We allow people to stake. We open a staking window for 1 hour. And during this 1 hour, we attracted $1.5 billion of Bitcoin. Okay, and the stakers, they stake anything between $300 to $30 million. So yeah, I think with the right innovation like Bitcoin OS and Bitcoin staking, I think Bitcoin holders and or people who are not in the Bitcoin ecosystem right now are actually very interested in entering this ecosystem.
I think there's two really interesting things here. First of all, Babylon have been among the pioneers in building additional functionality to Bitcoin. And the fact that, within 1 hour they brought in over close to $2 billion in value. That's just shows how thirsty the world is for things that they can do with their Bitcoin.
Yep.
Now, what Babylon have built, the staking with Bitcoin, is one of what I think are 3 big technological changes that are occurring to Bitcoin right now. The first is staking, which allows you to use Bitcoin for fast finality. The second is data availability layers being built on Bitcoin. And then the third is the ability to turn Bitcoin into a programmable layer itself through the methods of Bitcoin OS, and in particular through ZK proofs, allowing you to take the compute off-chain. You bring those 3 things together and you're looking at a totally different Bitcoin, and there's going to be ever more demand for people to do things. I'm sure people who have large amounts of Bitcoin, people who have smaller amounts of Bitcoin, and so there's going to be like you described, right? I think this really is the best time in the world to be figuring out how to start building programmable systems, asset management systems, smart contracts using UTXO systems.
Great, thanks. Marvin, do you have any further thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a common thread is like people, want utility of their Bitcoin, whether it's yield, whether it's smart contract functionality, whether it's able to secure other blockchains. And I think Cardano has its role to play, right? And I think by partnering with these other primitives and these other chains, we're really kind of like complementing each other in a very nice way. Yeah, it's really great to see how these systems come together, and they started, on their own, like you started with the talk, parallel channels, and it was never really the plan, but over time it just makes a lot of sense that we come together and kind of like create like a win-win situation for everyone.
And then from the standpoint of Cardano's position and on the market specifically, not from the standpoint of attracting developers and building great products as is, right? But from the standpoint of its current market cap, the interest towards Cardano, how rapid and how large would you see the reaction once the more and more news come out about the fact that Cardano is essentially now has Bitcoin on chain?
I'm maybe not the right person to ask. I build tools. I don't build products. So it's more about enabling functionality. But if I were to kind of look into the future, actually blockchains are going to be abstracted away. You already see it right now with stable coins. People are trading stable coins. They don't even know which blockchain that stablecoin is on, right? And now it's more and more, of the tech, it's gonna leverage blockchain as a technology, but abstract it from the user. And so you need to, whether you're on Bitcoin or Cardano, you're like, what are we providing? What solution are we providing to these higher level tools, right? And clearly Bitcoin is providing this immense liquidity, right? So if for financial systems, you want to create a lending protocol with very deep pools, and most likely, some of the best lending protocols will be on Bitcoin because they want to create this immense amount of liquidity to back those loans. And so then the question is like, what will be his role there in that system? Ethereum has its own way of doing things. I think Cardano's UTXO architecture makes it a really good system for scaling, like native scaling without these bridges where you have to like pay in a different token, where you have to, or essentially feels like a side chain. I think a lot of the scaling that we want to see, we want it to feel like it's actually scaling the layer that you're on, and not just you moving your assets from one chain to the next, right? So I think Cardano's expressiveness at be able to provide that programmability at the UTXO level is going to allow to bring a lot of functionality to Bitcoin in a very complementary way.
It's probably not just scaling, but also like privacy, for example, or like identity enhancements with like Midnight, which I think is quite hyped, leveraging the Cardano blockchain and exactly bringing those kind of additional attributes potentially even to Bitcoin, right, and enabling this kind of interconnectivity.
I mean, since we are now kind of living in reality where omni-chain layer solutions are becoming more and more abundant, as we see that there are more and more cross-chain transactions, etc. How do you generally perceive Cardano in this state of the market, and how rapidly do you think it will be fully integrated amongst other chains and gain popularity among users of other chains, not necessarily EVM compatible ones?
Sure. Recently, Cardano in August had an upgrade to their smart contract capabilities. It's the Plutus V3 upgrade, and essentially this was very innovative in this sense. It allows smart contracts on Cardano to verify signatures coming from EVM wallets, Bitcoin wallets, and even 0K proofs. What does it mean? It means that basically any EVM wallet, any user can interact with smart contracts on Cardano without having to download a new wallet. And I think that this is the purpose. Users are going to be able to connect and interact with Cardano systems, DeFi, without having to download a new wallet, write again a seed phrase, and because we all know that installing a new wallet, writing a seed phrase is not something that anyone can do easily. Like it's a critical moment that you should take some time to do it. And in this way, with this Plutus V3 upgrade, Cardano now is ready to become interoperability. And it's not anymore about Cardano doing stuff on its own and people wondering what's happening there, as he was asking before. But now it's more about Cardano interconnecting with other chains and offering things that they cannot. Natively, EVM lacks some things, UTXO lacks others, and any chain can provide the solutions.
So just to illustrate why I think this is super cool, like from a UI perspective, you can have someone who has their Bitcoin wallet, someone like me who's been sitting on their Bitcoin wallet for, I don't know, 13 years, hasn't done anything, sort of can blow the dust off of it, connect via this, and trustlessly lend out their Bitcoin or turn their Bitcoin into collateral for a stable coin, effectively messaging the Cardano ecosystem, having a smart contract interact with my Bitcoin on the Bitcoin main chain, locking up Bitcoin there directly from my wallet. As far as I'm concerned, I have only used Bitcoin. Right? My UX experience has been fully Bitcoin, but I've gotten the benefit of all of the programmability that comes with Cardano. This is the advantage of a world now where you can have interoperability no longer be a dirty word, right? We're not now trusting people to move messages. What we're doing is we're building cryptographic extensions between the different chains.
Fisher, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think as Edan mentioned, like Cardano currently have like 250 million TVL, right? And Bitcoin is such a large asset that's waiting to be injected, right? So, for example, with Babylon's Bitcoin staking, among the 1.5 billion staked, over 1 billion is actually liquid stake. So those liquid stake with Cardano's easy deployed smart contract and has a very good opportunity to enter Cardano's ecosystem, Cardano chain, and become part of Cardano's TVL.
Great. Marvin, Andrej, any further thoughts?
Yeah, I think the groundbreaking part is really that you can do those things now thanks to those technologies, like on a trust-less basis, and it's not some sort of centralized, and that's coming from me, from a centralized institution, right? That has a track record of failing, and there have been a lot of examples like I don't know, Celsius, FTX, and Co. All of them, and that's super dangerous. And thanks to technology and exactly this interoperability, those problems can be tackled now, right?
But then, as a custodian, do you foresee demand? Can you predict the demand towards Bitcoin-based products essentially from your audience, and basically how willing are people outside of crypto bubble to come in and not only say buy and hold Bitcoin, but also do something with it, and how is your client generally ready to understand and weigh the risks, and one or another way understand how Bitcoin is on Cardano, why is it on Cardano, why it was never possible, and how it is possible now?
That's a very good question, and that's again coming from the evil centralized finance side. That's exactly the answer, right? At the end of the day, most of our clients can easily do what we provide them as a service, but it comes at opportunity costs and focus. And if they trust our solution at least equally good to their own, let's say, custody setup, then there is a way for it, and the rest is really convenience and somebody that understands the process and actually can do that much smoother. And I mean, at the end of the day, we also encourage our clients to do diversification over their assets. Self-custody is something that everybody should do, but probably not for all their assets. And when it comes to this convenience kind of part, it's probably then really to like a centralized party that can provide all of that. And it's complicated, especially for people not from the crypto world that are not native to it, to set up a wallet, to deal with seed phrases. But then if you go into the exotic stuff, like on the DeFi space, where everybody wants to have higher yields and so forth, but it's also more nerdy, and the bigger the Lego effect at the end of the day is as well, by having all the protocols and so on interconnected, which is nice on one side, it also increases a lot of risks of, if one domino rock is then starting to fall, and then it has a big chain effect reaction.
Perfect. I guess as we are coming to an end of the panel, maybe some of you have, some final thoughts which you would like to convey.
I think that it's a good moment for us, because this is probably a nice panel in order that we can, as Cardano builders, Cardano developers, we can talk with the Bitcoin institution, Bitcoin builders, and come together and find a market fit for a product, actually a product that fixes issues. What's the issue? Institutions need yield for the customers. Bitcoin has a lot of liquidity, and Cardano has a DeFi ecosystem. So I think that there is nothing to add. These are the ingredients for a good plate.
Beautifully summarized.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.